CPUs don't care if your AC works or not. When you turn on the AC, command it on, the fans turn on. Our fans work. Our temperature gauge is now working. RPM gauge. The speedo does work as it moved when I drove this thing around, but let's see. So the ultra gauge is now reading. We have coolant temperature. We have you know, 71 degrees in the ultra gauge, etc., etc. But everything else seems pretty happy. We're still burping coolant, as you can see. It appears to have successfully bled the coolant system. We're residing at 181 degrees right now. The fans are still on, and it looks like we're just below center on the coolant gauge. I wanted to keep an eye on this one because now we're monitoring coolant temperature on the side of the block instead of at the coolant outlet on the back of the head. So it's important that we understand that if this thing hangs on the high side, it's because the section of the block being read is, you know, hotter than the number we read here. But this is the most important number. This one is effectively for reference at this point. So I got the ultra gauge configured to show us a couple of parameters. I'm going to take it around the block. I threw a clamp on the throttle linkage for the moment, just so I can at least apply throttle and hear the noises of. I took this thing to get aligned. We were about 6 degrees of toe out on this side and toe in on the other side. We can attribute that to the subframe because you can't always guarantee that everything's going to be in the same spot. Either way, this is why you get an alignment. Still need to take it out for a proper test drive. I've only taken it around the parking lot because I was operating with the throttle cable held at the gas pedal with a vice grip. So finally, my throttle cable pieces came in. These are just little throttle cable barrels, and they have different diameter holes in them, so you can just pick whichever one is the size of your throttle cable, and you cut your throttle cable to length, and then you just fill the thing with solder. It's pretty simple. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pull throttle cable. Let's see. I set the throttle cable to about middle position over here so we can have some adjustment for the future. And let's see. I'm going to make sure this is pulled, right? So this is how much length I have. I'm going to roll it around here. And then I'm going to place a dot down there where the throttle cable normally lines up. And then we'll take it back out, we'll cut to length, solder the new end on, snip, well obviously we have to snip that end off, and then we should have a working throttle cable. We're still waiting on the air intake filter to come in. We ordered one. I know earlier in the video there was a whole lot of noise and I was yelling, but everything is working as of now. Not a leak. I have one drop off of the power steering line at the other end of this. I don't know if that's residual or I need to tighten it, but it was red, so I'm willing to bet that's residual since we did flush the whole system out. Cable assembly went a little poorer than expected. I did end up having to use a 3/32 bit in order to make the holes big enough, but these drill out very easily. I guess these are all just like one size and you just drill them to what you need, but the outer diameter fits correctly. So either way, drilled out with 3/32, that was easy. It did not take kindly to solder, so what I ended up doing on the throttle cable, I did some testing on this, as you can see. I ended up using some tip tinner, and it still didn't really like the solder, but I got it to work. I flared the ends out of the throttle cable a little bit, and I dabbed the solder in there, and it holds. So we now have a throttle cable. It has a decent amount of adjustment in both directions. Let me get my hand on the actual pedal, and I'll demonstrate this sweep. So the pedal actually can go down further, I believe. I'm gonna have to adjust the hard stop on the pedal itself. And I took it for a whip around the parking lot. I also straightened out the steering wheel. 410mm nuts on the back of this, pop it off, one big 21mm in the center, rotate the wheel, and now it drives straight. Still gonna get an alignment done again after we get everything else done on the car and we're able to properly test drive it and make sure that it's the right height that the customer wants and the alignment is still square. So I cut out a matching exhaust cutout on this side. I found my center here, and then I just went ahead and traced a template off of this, and then I transferred it over to here. Took out the heat shielding because the heat shielding was only on one portion, sort of here, nothing over here. So I cleaned it all off after taking off that take that off, and then I put more DEI up in here. So we'll keep all of this stuff from getting hot because we are putting in 2 mufflers.